And hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gentleman Standard. I'm Yor-El Francis.
And I'm Cecil Burrowes. And for our listeners, we have a special treat for you today. I have a guest that I've known for a while, and we are really, really stoked as we've been talking about different ways that you need to think about improving and building a standard. Because as you know, standards are set, not followed. The importance of curating a brand that connects within all different segments and sectors of industry that will help you navigate rooms that you want to be in, not just rooms that um, you need to hope to be in, said in a less artful way. But our guest Kevin Davis has 20 plus years of product management, business development, and strategy across industries ranging from IT, professional services, management, and education organizations. He's the founder and CEO of Professor K Enterprises, which has been in existence for more than 21 years, which is a management consulting company providing leadership development and career advancements for executives ranging from mid-level managers and all the way to small business owners. His client roster is extremely impressive, ranging from Texas Instruments, a Coke. He has 150 plus self-sponsored leaders that he's attached to and dealing with on a regular basis. Currently, director of strategic initiatives of both Ready Recruit, which is an AI platform higher ed student recruitment initiative, GPRS, tied in with higher ed marketing. Sits on an advisory board at Mobility Credit Union, advising CEOs and that level line leadership around business development and growth within their companies, and has left certain places and spaces in brand partnerships as executive vice president, tied in with sports and education technology, ranging with partnerships from all the way from the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, NCAA, and NJCAA. Kevin, I think I nailed it relative to giving you your flowers. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. So happy to have you.
Thank you, Cecil, for the introduction, and Euro. Look forward to the conversation today, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yor-El.
I would say that what drives me is passion for winning, whether it be when I was younger, board games, or sports, or just being getting good grades. Winning is a part of, and performing to win has always been a driver for me. I get that from my parents. Um, when they somehow made the smallest things competitive. My uncle, my mom's brother, same way. My grandfather, my grandparents on both sides, all of them in their own ways, whether they were intentionally doing so or not, and still they focus on winning and being your best. So I've always strived to do that. And part of that too is something we'll talk about in a little bit more later, I was sure, is that uh, parents, grandparents are leaders in developing children, and they rewarded me for performing. They rewarded me for winning. So I wanted to be rewarded again, so therefore I repeated the behavior. And I think too often today we don't do that in business or even personally, where we reward for performance and in order to get this repeat performance. And that's what my parents and grandparents did for me. Yeah, well, any coaching engagement, there's a part of it that's focused on discovery, planning, and then execution. A lot of times, the majority of what needs to happen is that you have to rediscover who you are. What is your standard? What is your brand? What do you stand for? Why are they hiring you? Why are they paying you? This is the basics of that. Because sometimes in the rat race, we forget that. We get lost in the shuffle of who we are and what makes us unique. So helping clients in that discovery process to reconnect with what makes them who they are is first and foremost. Then based upon that, based upon what season they are in their career or in their business or both, then how does who they are help them excel and win? My purpose is to help clients create game plans to win the sport of business. So, but in order to do that, you have to be clear about who you are, what you have, and what is the gap between where you are today and where you're trying to go. So that's the discovery process is really about that. Once you have that, then you can develop a plan. How do I go from point A to point B? Or how do I go to B to C to D to E in order to get to where you want to be? And also be comfortable with the fact that the plan will change. That as you execute the plan, you may find and discover new things. And that as long as you stay focused on the destination as opposed to the how, and be comfortable and confident in who you are, then you can adjust your plan and how you get there, and the strategies that you deploy accordingly. And then working with clients to do just that, to celebrate the um, great things a part of the plan, and also the adjustments needs to be made. Which brings me to the execution part. Um, in execution, okay, I know who I am. I got a plan. A lot of times people fall off and say, okay, I'm good. I can go do this myself. Um, if we can do a lot of things by ourselves, then we wouldn't have so many people on this planet. So therefore, I'm here to be there as you go through it, as you have you executing and you find out, oh, that didn't work, or that worked really well. Let me keep doing more of that, and to be the sounding board and the third party person to provide perspective when you may be going too fast or too slow, and you just in order to manage pace. So that's what I would say is at a high level the three components of my approach in working with clients. Oh, yeah, that's easy. The winning part. Uh, when they get promoted, I got promoted. When they get a raise, I got a raise. Well, they got a raise. They may not share the raise. They may not share the raise with me all the time, but that's all right. But it's good to know they got it. When they achieve the outcomes that they desired from the coaching engagement, then that is the reward. Because that's what winning was. We define winning based upon those outcomes. So my objective with every engagement is to win. So I'm motivated, just like I was trying to win a board game or try to win a little league baseball game, or whether it be trying to grow the business where individually the same way and work with my clients. So even when I worked in education at an executive MBA program at TCU, when they asked, the first day of class when everybody shows up, because I worked in admissions and recruiting, they said, "Is this a great day for you?" I said, "That's good, but it's better when all of you graduate, because at that point the desired outcome has been achieved. The desired outcome is not just to have you come in. Yeah, that I got. I mean, that's good for me. I got in enough students for class so I can keep my job. Fine. But the real objective is to graduate. And actually, the real objective is not only just to graduate, but to graduate with the knowledge and the connections and everything you need to have in order to fulfill whatever path you're trying to go down and what you're trying to achieve based on that investment that they made. So I get excited when they win.
It's funny because you and I started engaging with each other in the kind of sports and entertainment space.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
was trying to do financial inclusion with student athletes and
Hmm.
going on a path on that. And you have done a lot within that space to the benefit and the betterment of our student athletes. So I thank you for that. But you mentioned something as it relates to the 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 sports landscape and tying that
Hmm.
into the boardroom, right?
Hmm.
And as an owner, because I bring that up because we're always competing.
Hmm.
What are some
Hmm.
things that you've seen, especially when you're looking out path and you're giving advice to individuals who are going to hire, um, around what separates somebody as we talk about building standard, and setting standard and following that pathway in that competitive environment that shows up really well in your experience?
Yeah, I think that organizations, whether it be businesses, nonprofits, um, universities, middle schools, whatever it may be, and also ourselves, we got to be clear about our brand. What if you're clear about your standard and where that standard can take you, which is your vision, and what is your purpose, which is your mission, then you need to make sure that you're working that your plans and strategies align with that. So when you think about a sports team or a program in Division One or any level of collegiate athletics, there's a certain way that they go about winning. They construct the roster, they recruit, they do everything. They have certain coaches. Everything is designed around this way of winning, and the whole season is about executing according to that plan. Now, those who win consistently are flexible with the plan. Going back to my point before, hey, I don't have all the talent this year to do exactly the way I want to do it, so I'm flexible enough to adjust according to the talent that I have available. Um, I have more than I normally have, so therefore I'm going to lean in this way. So again, the objective is winning, not to prove your process or prove your strategy or that I'm the smartest. My game plan is better than everyone else. Programs, companies that get caught up in that miss opportunity. Individuals that say, "Oh, I'm a marketer, or I'm a brand manager, I'm a financial analyst, or I'm a consultant." When you label yourself, you limit yourself in regards to what your opportunities really are, and you're not clear about what your outcomes could be based on who you really are. So when you're trying to define, if you're clear about your standard, and therefore you're clear about your purpose, then you have a better chance of winning consistently. When you think about the New York Yankees, for example, uh, certain standards they maintain over time allow for them to win consistently over time. When you think about other sports organizations at the professional and collegiate level that have consistently won, the players, the coaches are different, but yet the standard remains the same. When the standard was lost or was not clear, that's when winning stopped or or slowed down. So to me, that's what we can tie in when we think about business versus athletics is it's an organization of people going towards a common goal and common purpose, but they do so in a certain way based on who they are and what they stand for. When that is clear, it can happen consistently. When it's not clear, then its probability is lower.
Amazing. Relative to the way that we think about it and connect those dots. And it's crazy that you bring up the Yankees. You could have brought up the Phillies, by the way. That's another team
They,
as
they
an
haven't
option.
they haven't won as
My
much.
Philly pride.
They haven't won as much.
that's, a, that's a good point. Our standards erode a little bit.
I
That's
mean,
I get it.
well, let's go
That's
there for a
fair.
second.
Fair
For
response.
Phil, I mean, the Phillies,
Yeah.
their best player back when we were growing up was Mike Schmidt. Even Mike Schmidt talks openly
Yep.
about how he wasn't clear about his own standard, where he was performing, especially for a third baseman, at a level that was historically better than anyone ever of all time. But he didn't see himself that way, and
Mhm.
therefore, as the leader of that team, then when the time they needed him to be his best, he wasn't. Until that, and then when that changed, that's when they won.
Good point. Great point. How do you coach someone to identify their own strengths before leading others? Because you're having a lot of executives that are talking to you around how do I improve myself? How do I build those things up? Because ultimately that flows through to them developing an optimal team based off of set standards. What's your practice around coaching someone to identify their own strength?
First and foremost, I have to be a good listener. Um, I have to hear what's being said, but also what's not being said. There was echo there for a second. All right. And in listening intently, I'm also um, focused on what I'm feeling. The pace of speech, the tone, the eye contact, or the facial expressions, all the above are telling me something. Then from there, I ask
Hmm.
questions. And the questions are open ended, but very direct. Help trying with the goal being to help the individual identify what I'm hearing, or for me to, and also for me to verify what I'm hearing. I could be, it could be off, or that it may be a different way of looking at it based on that. But in order to get the clarity needed in that discovery process, and one thing I didn't mention before, those three parts is every conversation. It's at a high level for the entire engagement, but also every conversation is there's a discovery that has to happen because new information is coming in. So I have to listen to understand what's been happening, but also I need to ask questions in order to dive a little deeper. Um, Also, being good enough to repeat what I heard to seek to understand. So I'm playing back what the person said because sometimes, we get to talking and we get to flowing and we don't exactly remember what we said. So play it back to them and say, "Oh yeah, that's what I said. That's where I feel, or that's where I'm coming from. That's what's on my mind." And then in asking questions, providing perspective, or even in making statements that spark thought and connection to the answer that's already within the client. Because most of the time, we already know the answer. We just haven't, the clouds haven't cleared enough for us to be able to take action on the answer or to identify it. Once that's identified, then we can plan to take action and execute.
So Kev, real one of the things that's been interesting. We had a podcast that we did called The Drift, and the whole
Hmm.
concept of the drift was executives who have let themselves slip, right?
Hmm.
Because we've all gotten to a point when we build in our careers where you hit your
Hmm.
plateau and things start
Hmm.
eroding from that standpoint. And I'm sure you've run across that as somebody
Hmm.
who's 15 plus, 20 plus years in,
Hmm. Hmm.
talking to executives that have stalled.
Hmm.
What's some advice? Because that's impacting
Hmm.
your standard, right? At the end of the day.
Yes. Right.
And that's when
Hmm.
bad things start happening. What's your advice that you would give to executives that may be heading in that direction or experiencing as we speak um, today?
Hmm. Sure. First thing, I think all of us has to be honest with ourselves, uh, and then ask
Mm.
ourselves questions, but also face this reality that I'm about to state. Every job has four outcomes. You get promoted, you leave a job for another job, you get fired or laid off, or you retire. And in leaving a job, you can leave the job because you have another job or because you no longer work for whatever reason. So, in other words, whatever job we have today is not going to be forever. There will be an end, and we have to act accordingly and plan accordingly. So, when we are feeling stalled, that's a sign that we're at the end. So, you have to be
Mm.
honest with yourself and ask the questions. Are you still leveraging and working within your strengths? If not, why not? Are you still
Mm.
being challenged? Do you
Mm.
have anything left to accomplish in the job? Because a lot of times when we face layoffs, it may be that the organization has seen not they don't see any value in the role that you're sitting in. So if you see that before they do, you can move. Um, but at the same time, if that role is a fit for you, but it's not a fit for the organization, that doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It just means it's no longer a fit. Because again, jobs like relationships have a beginning and end. Um, Also, you have to ask the question, what's keeping you there? If you feel stalled and you're not happy, then why are you still there? Is it the retirement? I'm 2 years from retirement, or I got this vesting period coming up, or I like my team, or I don't want to let anyone down, or some combination of the above. And then once you've identified that, what needs to be in place to make a change? Because being stalled is not a long-term solution. So those are the type of things I go through when I work with clients who are in those positions or in those situations. And usually it leads to a change. Well, no, it always leads to a change. Most of the time, it leads to a change in the job. Sometimes this is a change in just expectations and understanding. I have one client right now that is probably 2, 3 years from retirement. They have the performance record to get promoted. There's just no opportunity at the present time in the company that she works at. Her current working situation is okay, is not completely optimal based upon her performance. So then she has to make a decision. How do I make the most of the current situation I'm in? Am I willing to take a risk and step out and just say, hey, I want to do something completely different at this stage when you're close to retirement? So those are the type of things that we talk about in order to come up with a solution. So I've actually got to check in with her this week to see how that conversation, the latest round of conversations went.
I'm curious, how, or in your experience,
Hmm.
what have you seen as the biggest obstacle that people put in front of themselves that keeps them from the path to success? Like, have you seen something that has been a constant amongst various group of people, or is it just a variant in your experience?
Um, Three things come to mind: uh, expectations, communication,
Hmm.
and change. Let me go in that order.
Ah,
Our expectations may be not aligned with reality. Um, for example, wanting to get promoted when the company is not growing. There's nowhere to get promoted to, right? Or expecting a certain amount of reward when, generally speaking, this is not there. If you're not on a winning, if you, it's like saying, I want a max contract, but yet we're not making the playoffs. That happens all the time in the NBA, by the way, but it doesn't make sense in business for sure because there's
It
no
does.
if we're maxing you out, then that means we gotta lose some headcount. But if we lose headcount while we're not winning, then all of a sudden that means we're going to expect more from you. But you say I want to get maxed out without based upon the performance already done. There's a disconnect. So all of a sudden you create complexity or create angst when really it's all about all centered around misalignment of expectations. Just as an example. And also, if your expectation is that the company is going to be exactly how it was when you joined it or when you were at your peak, when obviously market has changed, the industry's changed, political climate's changed, other things have changed too, that's going to affect that, then your expectations need to adjust as well. So expectations. Communication. Um, Things that are thought but not spoken become when your perceptions all of a sudden or what's in your head um, drives your decision making and also how you feel about where you are in your career or where you are in your job or business. But yet you haven't had conversation to validate or to seek to understand, then that lack of communication or flow of communication where people don't feel as though they can talk to each other or be real, that causes problems where people feel stalled or feel as though they can't move anywhere. Um, when I think about uh, that situation where um, someone on their team is saying that, well, why am I not getting these assignments? And it may be that they want you to focus on um, whatever major prize you have today, but yet you feel as though you got more bandwidth. But if you haven't had a chance, if you don't schedule the time to talk about it, And then and even when you do schedule time, you don't talk about it, then you continue to be in that situation. So all of a sudden, the assumptions and the perceptions take over as opposed to reality because you're not communicating. Then change, which I've alluded to in both the other ones. Um, what was will not always be, and we have to get comfortable with that. And some levels we are. When we started this conversation, it was one time. Now it's a different time, and we're comfortable with that. So we're managing towards the time. Yes, we're older, one day older than we were yesterday. Some of us are comfortable with that. But this, at a certain level, we are as human beings designed to deal with change. But when it comes to our careers, business, family, personality, certain things, all of a sudden we hold on to what was as if we're holding on to the tree, and we don't want them to cut it down. For example, my daughter's a senior in high school, so this is a big year for us. She will be moving on to bigger and better things. That's the plan. That's always been the plan. That's what we wanted. But yet, we have to act and do things as parents, as well as she has to act as the individual who's about to move on, as if she's working towards what's next, as opposed to being holding on to how we've done things before, because that's past. Our expectations, um, communication, and also understanding that change is inevitable.
And congratulations to your daughter. Congratulations to you all as I'm sure as parents that
So,
have
yeah, we
helped
haven't won yet.
mold
She hasn't
her
graduated.
as best you can. she's come.
We-
It's
yeah,
coming up. I'm
it's
throwing that
coming. It's
out there.
coming. It's coming. It's coming. But thank you. I appreciate it. But yeah,
It's coming.
like I
It's
said,
coming.
yeah, we have a bunch of small wins we're gonna celebrate along the way. But yeah, we haven't gotten fully there yet. So yeah. But thank
I'm
you, sir.
with you on that. And
You're
what's been interesting for me is just kind of getting a little peek behind the curtains at you. You have had quite a career, and what I'm really interested in is taking into consideration all the what looks like really impressive milestones along the way. What made you leave the title track that you had and that you were on to build a consulting practice? I'm looking at a lot of executives right now, Kevin, as you know, that are probably coming your way, that are in some instances being displaced out of where they've been and are just trying to react around, what do I do now? How do I
mm-hmm.
build into myself now? How do I use my skill set to develop my own thing? That are very interested. I've heard a lot of people that are very interested in what Professor K enterprises do today and potentially starting their own thing. So you're probably going to have some folks that are very interested around how you approach that. So what had you leave the title track that you were on to build a consulting agency? And what did year one look like to you for those that
Yeah.
are looking for
Oh
that type of
yeah.
advice?
Yeah. Um, so a couple things occurred. One, um, I hit a ceiling early in my career. So when I became a vice president, I was 33. So I was moving. I got to vice president level in 5 years at Sabre. So I was the youngest, but also I was the darkest executive at the company. And when I first became vice president, I was one of three African American executives. By the time a year passed, I was the only one at a Fortune 500 company that had just recently gone public, maybe a couple of years or a year prior. So I faced a lot of microaggressions and macro, if that's such a word, aggressions too. Not either because I was young, the youngest. I looked different than everyone else. I sounded different than everyone else because I'm not from Texas. And then also because somehow the youngest executive had the largest product budget and also was integral to the growth trajectory of the company. So some people's like, well, how did you end up with that? Well, part of that was because no one else wanted it. Because as you know, a lot of times when we ascend to certain levels, it's because we took the job no one wanted. It was a job I wanted. It was the one I asked for. When I had the opportunity to work for the chief marketing officer as the chief of staff, I said, no, I'd rather wait for my opportunity to be promoted within the organization I was in because I thought the company needed me there. And also I thought I could be my best in that position. So that's what happened. After a few years of that, then my growth trajectory at the company stalled. Now, of course, after rising up to from analyst to vice president in 5 years, that's to be expected because going from VP to senior VP is a big leap. So it wasn't from my perspective. I didn't feel as though that I was supposed to move up to senior vice president, in the same pace. But yet, because of the role I had, things slowed down. Then I was given an option. I can leave that job. Well, actually, I wasn't. First, I wasn't given an option. I was taken out of that job. I was moving to an individual contributor role as an executive, which made me vulnerable. So, special project is, they call it.
Hmm.
I
Wow.
performed really well in that
Oh,
special
the
project
good old
area.
special project. The
Yeah,
good
right.
old
That's right.
special
That's right.
project.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I performed really well in the special project role, better than they expected. So then all of a sudden the conversation came, okay, we can't have you special projecting anymore. We need you to land in a spot. So, okay. So tell me where you want to go. So I gave him a list of 6 things, which included a job in HR, which was he thought was he said I could see you do well in that, but that's not a thing. So okay. Because at that point, that's when I started to see that part of my value to the company could be developing talent and coaching. Because that was around the time I got exposed to coaching. I made the request out of the 6 opportunities I said I would do. One of them was to move in HR and instill within the HR organization an understanding of the type of talent that we needed and how to develop it. So when those 6 opportunities were said no to, they said, no, here's door number 7. You'll take a step back. You won't be vice president anymore. And you'll move into sales because the path to being a senior executive at the company was to go into sales. So it's okay. Um, that's so. What's my other option? Well, if you don't take that job, then we'll separate you from the company. Okay, let me think about it. So I already had in motion. So on July 20th of 2001, I think that's right, or two, somewhere in there. That was a conversation with my boss. On July 21st, Professor K Enterprises was incorporated. I had been working on it already because previous to that, my dad passed away. And I knew that I needed to be available for my mother, who was back in Chicago. So doing the corporate thing was, especially in where things were, may or may not be the thing. I need to come up with plan B that would give me the flexibility, but still allow me to do what I do best. July 22nd is my birthday, actually. So all those 3 days was interesting back then. So to answer your question succinctly, um, I was making a choice to do something different already because I saw the end was coming, and then that was
Okay.
validated, and then I took door number 3 and said, no, I'll take the package. So I left. Now, of course, when they say they're going to pay you, you sign something a year prior that says they have to pay you for a year. If they separate you from the company, then that makes it easier. So the company financed my first year.
It's always great when they're able to finance the first year of any project that you're going to be tied into. I know a
Right.
lot of people are
Hmm.
very interested in what does it take to build this thing up during your first year.
Yeah. So first biggest piece of advice: stay focused. Um, I like variety. I like trying to, you're supposed to have diversification in business when you make any investment and all that. So I took that too much to heart. So I started executive coaching. I started small business consulting, and I also became a certified sports agent all at the same time. Now, how someone said, how can that be all one company? Well, right. Well, I said, well, it's all
Yeah.
about developing talent and helping them win. That's how I saw it. Now, to everybody else, it was three different things. And that's part of the issue is that, there was a little voice in my head say, hey, Kevin, just do one and then build it and then go. But I said, no, I can do all three. So that first year, I didn't get as far as I could have because I was trying to do too much too soon. If I had just focused on executive coaching, then and took that as far as it could go immediately, then I would have gotten further sooner. So my word of advice in that first year is that particularly where you have a clear timeline, where you have someone where you don't have to change your lifestyle completely, take advantage of that opportunity to focus on getting one thing up and running that's going to be somewhat equal to what you're doing, or something at least enough to cover your lifestyle expenses. If you can do that, that's because the objective is not about building a business, it's about making the transition. So I'll pause there.
You said it's about making the transition. That's
Right, because
the the
right,
key thing that can get people. Yeah.
exactly. I did three things to give me three chances to have something, or if I put all three together, then I can make more than I can make equal or more of what I was making before. But you have to give yourself a chance to mentally, physically, psychologically, all the ologies to make the transition. Because if you're going to do it, you have to be committed to it. Now, of course, after working, doing the business full time, then 08, 09 happened. I had my pipeline of business I built up over the first 2.5 years to be about 220 grand in revenue, just me working by myself, which is solid. But yet that dwindled down to $5,000 pipeline come January of 2009. Why is that significant? Well, that's a lot of money to drop off, but at the same time, February 2009, we were expecting our first and only child. so, so I got to figure something
Yep.
out. And lo and
Yeah.
behold, at the same time,
You've got diapers to buy.
that's right, right, among other things, yeah, formula too. And then what happened? One of my clients at the time, TCU Neely Executive MBA program, I said, "Hey, we look for someone to join our team to help us with missions and recruiting." I said, "I know somebody." They said, "Who?" I said, "Me."
Mm.
Now, 2 years prior, when I first started the business, I was approached to lead the career services office at TCU in the business school. And I said, quote, I can never see myself driving to Fort Worth every day because I live on the other side of town. Well, circumstances changes your perspective because actually, I've said this a few times. When I applied to business school and I had a chance to go to the University of Texas, I said, nah, I just can't see myself living in Texas. Now I've been here I've been here 30 years. So anytime I've said, oh, I
Wow.
can't see myself doing it, I end up doing it. So I probably need to be careful how I say that unless I really want to do it. But long and short of it, that's where I had to make the
That's your
decision to
setup.
say, yeah, I have to do both for a certain season, where I have to have something full time or something that's steadier, but also to keep the business going. So that's where, again, like I said before about plans, that wasn't the plan. The plan was I'm never going back to work for somebody else. But um, just things changed. So I had to adjust accordingly and do both. I did both for about 11 years, and then transitioned to work for one of my other clients, Vin McCaffrey and Game Plan. And that's how we met through Game Plan. And
Yeah.
that one
Hmm.
was a better fit because it was a smaller business. It was enterprising. It was startup-y and small. But at the same time, I was working from home, so I could do both easily. No more hopping in the car, driving for an hour one way and back. So that was good. But at the same, and also I got a chance to lead and develop a team again, which I hadn't done in years. and I wasn't the opportunity I was going to have at TCU. So when I think about the transition that people are facing, this really comes back to what we said before. What is your standard?
Yeah.
What is your mission? And what is your vision? And what you do is just a vehicle for a certain period of time. Because again, as we said before, every job has four outcomes. You get promoted, you lead a job, you get fired or laid off, or you retire. So even when you run your own business, it will come to an end at some point, um, or it may need to be adjusted.
That's
So I
great.
think
That's
that's
great.
where it's really about the mindset that you have to work on to say that I'm relying upon me to make sure that I get paid every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever the frequency is, as opposed to it just comes and I just have to show up. That to me is really the main thing you have to do in year one. So when we
You're
say
on a point.
reinvent yourself, people think I have to change who I am. All you're doing is changing the vehicle you're driving. So instead of a Camry, you got a Tesla, or you went from the Tesla down to a Pinto. Oh, sorry. Nobody knows what Pinto is anymore. But my point is that
You're
reinvention
dating
is
yourself, right? You're dating
right,
yourself.
right, that's right. But reinvention is not about changing your standard. It's changing how you express it or how you get to your outcome or your mission, or how you execute your mission and how you get to your vision. So reinventing is really more so what the second thing you said, Yor-El, is more of a pivot. I'm pivoting or changing how I get there or how I do it, but I'm still who I am. Because the reason why those three things made sense to me is because all I'm doing is advising someone on how to be their best and have a game plan to win in sport of business. Because sports is business, small business is business, working in a Fortune 500 company is business. It's all business. So to me, it was all the same. To everyone else, no, that's three different things. No, it's just for me, it was the same. But I understood that that's where my brand and my standard has to be clear to those. Otherwise, how can they have clarity, enough clarity to know how to work with me and how to take advantage of what I'm offering, such that they can get to where they want to be. So reinvention is more so of a maybe repositioning that we need to do more often than not, as opposed to really about changing who we are.
That it's funny when you talk about pivoting. One of the things that, and this is probably a question for both of you. Um, the you mentioned being a sports agent and
Hmm.
some of the pivots that you did, although the pathway was still the same, right? You're going
Hmm.
in a particular direction. The car that you're driving changes a little bit along the way. But that when you talk about sports agency and Yor-El, you talk about what you're doing in the entertainment space. Uh, there's an element of where your standards matter on how you show up to win the opportunity to engage with somebody. Can you talk a little bit about um, standards that have helped get you the relationship in those settings in the sports world? And Yor-El, you can talk about it from an entertainment perspective. I'd love that insight for listeners to say, like, how are y'all showing up that convinces somebody to do business with you?
Yeah,
And Kevin,
I
I'll throw
would
that to you
say,
first.
yeah, I would say that the reason why I was not as successful in being a sports agent was because my standard, my brand was better fit for working with executives. I didn't play in high school or college. Um, I'm not a lawyer. So those are two things a lot of people look for. Can you do the contract and write the contract? Even though now AI can do that for us. And then, hey, did you used to play and know all the players, know all the coaches and players and know the industry, all that? No, no, I was one person could look at me as a super fan who just was applying his business knowledge towards working with athletes. So on the flip side, though, as an executive, I had reached where most people wanted to be by age 33. So my brand and what I stood for, my standard, played better in that space to say, well, if he was able to do it, he could help me figure that out too. So coming to that realization, going back to saying, well, I can't do all these things at the same time and give any because I'm not giving as much as I need to where I stand. To me, that was part of it. Now, how did I get the clients I got? I had to, based upon my positioning in the market, I had to go after ones players or athletes that were not the top athlete. I had or wasn't at the top school. I came
Mm,
in number two on a couple of guys that went got drafted in Major League Baseball. One that went to University of Texas at Arlington, which is not a name in college baseball, but yet they had a player who was definitely really good. And the reason why he went to UTA is because he grew up in Arlington and it was close to home. So he just happened to be there. And I found him there. But yet he ended up going with an agent who used to play Major League Baseball. And then came close to another kid who was at Dallas Baptist University who ended up getting drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays. The other guy got drafted by Oakland A's. He went with the brother-in-law of the head coach, who happened to be um, someone who used to play for Texas Rangers. So I lost out to people
gotcha.
because of that reason, you know. So the third guy who I was making some moves towards, you know, going with Scott Boras. So I mean, I was in the space where
It's
I
got it's got
to the point where um, I had credibility based on what I came across the way he knows what he's talking about. Because the reason why the guy got drafted in the first round that went to UTA was because I talked to his coach about here's how to get him exposure as a collegiate athlete that will get him towards Team USA. And pretty much everyone who's on Team USA gets drafted in the first three rounds. Somehow, a college baseball coach didn't know that. But then he told him that. I told his family that. They execute the plan, and then next thing you know, he goes 10th overall. Now, of course, he had to produce on the field, but you know that part was easier for him. But actually getting exposure such that he can get to that level, that's what happened. So I came across as credible. I did my homework, I did my research, but yet contrast that to on the business side. You know, I never, you know, even though there's coaching certifications out there, no one's ever asked me if I was certified. No one's ever asked me about my credentials based upon when they say, oh, he did this, he did that, he did that. Yeah, this is someone that I need to talk to. So I think part of this is knowing where your standard or your brand, what's your home games? Where is it need to reside? Where do you need to position yourself on the map to get maximum return on investment?
Thank you for that.
Hmm.
Your
Hmm. Can I build upon that point
networks
real
are
quick?
extremely important, and yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so to Uriel's point, uh, I would equate that in the corporate world for people who work at a company for a long time. And see, so you can understand where I'm coming from on this. Um, when you work at one company for a long time, you can easily define yourself, not everyone else, but you can define yourself as your brand being the company as opposed to what you really your standard. Two, if you do that, then your identity is tied to the company. So if something with that relationship changes, then you feel stalled when you're really not. It's really more about your standard being tied to something that's not about you. It's not something that you own. So when you do that, you have limited your network, similar to what Yor-El said about what can happen in the entertainment space. And therefore, when things changes, then your opportunities seem to dwindle. So to the point that I think Cecil you're about to make, and I'll throw it back to you, is that's why networking is so important. But if you're clear about your standard being that I work for company X, or I work in this industry, or I'm a this type of function, or I'm a consultant, I'm an engineer, it is more so about like, I help people create game plans to win the sport of business. There's multiple ways you can do that, but it's clear about that's the objective. But you can do that in multiple ways. If you tie more towards something like that, then when opportunities present itself, you say, I need to talk to these people about how they do this, or I need to talk to those people how they do that. And then you all of a sudden now, instead of using the company you work at as your standard, it's more of your platform to get access to other folks. And I think that could work in both realms, where you just based upon your mindset to say, all right, within this network, I have these people. How can they help me expand it based upon what my standard is to make sure other people are aware of it, and also I can find other ways to utilize it.
It, the big thing for me, and Kevin, you nailed it. Um, I was the exact example of what you just referenced, right? 20, almost 30 years with the company, loyalty, and I became that company from that perspective. And unfortunately, when it was time to really lean on my network, plenty of opportunities came up through my network while I was there from that perspective, but I was comfortable. And what you generally tend to find is an unused network is not a network at all. At least not an optimized one, right? You've got to have those conversations. You have to be engaged, but you have to have your game plan. To your point that you made, and figure out where your game plan is leading you. There probably were a lot of stops along the way where something, whatever, however we believe it, higher power, whatever, was pointing me into a direction, but I was too comfortable to listen. And what ends up happening with that standpoint, because you're attached to said company, when change occurs, you are not prepared for what comes up. And the challenge that we pose to a lot of these individuals, and hopefully where people are hearing us, is you've got to ensure that you've set a standard that's impeccable relative to what you expect of yourself. You're not following others. We talked about this, the climb. We talked about this in another podcast, where you're climbing to some peak that others have told you to climb to, versus where you need to be. And unfortunately, when you've been stuck to a particular place for so long, you end up making a climb in an area that wasn't ever your vision or dream, but you reach the top and you're like, I don't want to be here. I want to be there. So thank you for kind of connecting those dots, Kevin, from that perspective. I think absolutely a lot of executives are probably listening to us today, are not fully taking advantage of the standards they've set for themselves and the game plan, most importantly, as you put it, to progress as they need to, because the inevitable is happening. One of the four things that you talked about, you're in one of those four stages, and we got to be thinking
Hmm.
about that. So
Yeah,
thank you for
and
that. Great
Cecil,
perspective.
go, you will. Yeah, sorry. Let me build upon that point. How to know if your standard is not being defined by you and by something else or someone else. Look at your calendar. What drives your schedule? If your schedule is driven by the company, even on hours after 5, that's defining your standard. If you are picking up kids in the middle of the day when you are supposed to be working, that's driving your standard. Now, different seasons in life will require that both those things I just described to happen. So I'm not trying to judge anyone who's in that season. It's just more so of that's defining your standard at that time. If it's defining your standard and how you think of yourself completely, and that's all you see, then your opportunities are limited. Oh, I can't really look at another job because I gotta go do this, or I can't be at the recital or the track meet because I have to go travel for this and do that, hey, I can't be at that important meeting because I gotta go do this. So see how that can affect things, as opposed to what is your standard, what are you working towards. That will help you define how you can do it all, or how you can balance it. But yet at the same time, if you're letting one thing rule the day, your schedule will tell you.
Point taken.
Wow. Um, hmm. Um, it's a really good question. What would I tell me then? Uh, always strive to be your best. Don't forget about winning. There were times during that stage in life, maybe more so in the college days, early college days, where I thought winning was more about being part of the group as opposed to being excelling at my best. When I was an undergrad, my grades fell off from where they were in high school and everything else. Winning was no longer defined by being the best student. Maybe because when you go to a big university, you don't see where that's possible day to day, because they make sure that some universities make sure that that's not clear to certain people to be able to be achieved. So therefore, I sought a different path to win. But yet, not to the deference of being my best and doing my best, because my early part of my career had some impact because I didn't do that. Like for example, I went to grad school, I had to take out loans as opposed to getting a full ride because I didn't excel at the highest level or best I could in undergrad. So I learned that lesson quickly. So therefore, once I got to grad school, I wasn't necessarily trying to be the valedictorian, but I was trying to be the best Kevin. So I got the most out of my graduate school experience, to the point where I got named the top African American or minority student in my class. So that, and then I used that same mindset going into the corporate realm, which is important because I left home, completely home, left the Midwest and moved to Texas. And if didn't have that mindset, I wouldn't have been successful. So I would reaffirm that throughout, you need to always do your best. Doesn't mean your best is going to get you on the top of the podium. It just means that you always do your best, because if you're doing your best, then you have less questions to answer to yourself. You know what you need to adjust in order to move forward. Right. Hmm.
Yeah. And I got two questions for you to kind of back that from that standpoint. It's funny, you give a lot of advice to executives, right?
Hmm.
Um, my first question is this: what's a strength you've seen actually ruin someone's career? Because your biggest strength unmanaged is your biggest liability, and a lot of people don't think about it
Hmm.
that way
Yeah.
when we
No.
talk about strengths and standards. What's one that you've seen?
Yeah. I would say um, the biggest drawback that a lot of executives face is trying to be a player manager. Um, it's hard to be a great executive if you're still trying to be the best individual. So if you're still in the spreadsheets, if you're still doing the presentation, if you're still doing all those things, you're taking yourself away from what uniquely you're supposed to do in your role. You're supposed to lead. You're supposed to motivate. You're supposed to arrange the lineup to make sure that you get the maximum production, the team that day and that week, that month, that quarter, that year. That is what you do. Is it as sexy as you did before? Well, maybe not. And if it isn't, then that means you're not an executive because that's the job. The job is no longer about doing those tactical things. It is about strategy. If you still are doing you love the deal, so you're in the middle of the deal, but yet you're not allowing your sales VP to lead the deal, then what are you doing? You're in the way. So one of your strength, so because again, your standard is, or your how you see yourself is tied to who you were or what you did. Now you haven't changed cars yet, right? When you get promoted, you're in a different car.
You got to
It should
change
be a better
cars.
car, right? But sometimes, and just to give you a personal example, when I first got promoted to first line manager, the first week I sat in my analyst cube. I didn't move, even though the manager's cube was right across the little hallway. I mean, it was 5 steps, but I didn't move until that Thursday. One of my former teammates, now employees, told me, "Say, hey man, when you going to become our boss?" I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "When you going to move to the cube?"
That's great.
And
Yeah,
so that Thursday night, I started moving my stuff. And the only reason why I hadn't moved is because I just didn't feel like picking up my stuff. But that's the same thing that we do day to day when we are senior executives, still analyzing things to the level of detail of what people who you are paying or you have employed and hired to do. You have to trust them to do their jobs. Otherwise, you cannot evaluate whether or not they performed or not. Because being able to, you don't pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars just to execute your plan. You pay them to come up with a plan collectively based upon the vision that you've outlined and execute appropriately. And you can't evaluate how well they do that if you don't give them a chance. So that to me, Cecil, I would say is what I see consistently is that because when you do that,
great feed.
if your boss is asking you to raise up, you feel as though you can't. So now all of a sudden you feel stalled because why are you say, well, I'm doing all these other things. Well, are you doing those things because you don't trust them? Are you doing all those things because they don't have the right skills and you didn't hire the right folks? Are you doing all those things because that's who you think you are, and that's where you see value, and that's where you're comfortable? So,
Great, great insight. Great insight. And let me add on. So my second question to that would
sure.
be you're coaching people to identify strength in others. What's a strength in yourself you were the last one to see from a standard perspective?
um, that's a tough question. Let's see. Um, you know, ironically, uh, just being able to coach people. I think that's something that, I mean, even when I was on the block, I was the one who got the little kids together to teach them how to catch. Um, so we can have a better team when we play the other block in baseball or softball. I took the time to do that. Now, I was doing that because I wanted to win, not because I want to coach. I want to have all of us to be able to win. I don't want no weak spots in the lineup. That was my objective. But fast forward into more of a corporate life, when I was mentoring a lot of individuals at Sabre, and then found out that there was this group of people who uh, got paid to work independently to coach people. I said, wait a minute, that's what I've been doing. That's not much because I was no longer just mentoring them. I was answering questions. I was asking them questions. I was helping them make decisions on what they should do next in their job, how to talk to their boss, how to work with the other teammate, how to work with that older teammate that's giving them a hard time. So we were diving into things like that. That was well past mentorship, and I didn't know that. So I would say that the one component that um, I didn't discover until my 30s, and actually even to this day, finding out that that's really that coaching element that I do. That was not what I had in mind. That was not a car that I thought I was going to drive. I saw myself as a product manager. Yeah, I saw that. I saw myself as a sports statistician. I saw myself as a computer programmer. I saw myself running a business, but I never saw myself listening to people's problems and coaching them on how to solve them. I did that. So it was a tough question, but that was actually a pretty simple answer. That's because I didn't see that. No. Yeah.
It's funny the things that we do as kids early on that kind of builds a blueprint on how we're going to execute later in life. Trying to correlate those two things, probably with you laying the groundwork of where you were going to end up. It's one of the things in my professional career that was the last, I would say, was the last for me to see was the empathy quotient of the things that I do, where I'm able to kind of get where everybody's, or at least attempt to get where everybody's coming from. And it was funny because what built me to that, it makes no sense when I tell this story, but you all know when you would go over to aunts and uncles' homes with your parents, and they were like, if you don't get down to that basement and, and go hang out with those kids, and grown folks are up here talking, stay out of our hair, stay out of our eyesight until it's time to go home, and you better not ask to sleep over. The whole deal. But when you get regulated to the basement, and as you're growing, you're trying to get whatever you can to get included in grown folk talk, as they talk about
Mm-hmm.
from that
Yeah.
standpoint. You're in your mindset, you're trying to make certain situations work. Like I'm amongst others. I've been regulated to a particular place. I've got to figure out how to thrive with this in this environment. It's just the way that we grow. And for some reason, that has laid the blueprint of me kind of coming from diverse mindsets and ideas and thinking at whatever level. Because once I was able to get into the space of where I was a part of the grown folk talk, the charm element came along with me, and I was able to hold a conversation and engagement. And for some reason, man, that's carried through for me through college, through early on in my professional career. I'm able to be in any room, and you're not going to outpeople me. And that's been a way that I've
Mm-hmm.
seen it from that
Mm-hmm.
standpoint. I know how to
Mm-hmm.
connect with anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because I was regulated to the basement earlier in life, and that blueprint built. It's crazy the things that we learn that help influence us as we grow professionally. So. But Kevin,
Yeah. I gotta tell you, that
thank you
reminds me
so much for your
when we
time.
offline, I tell you a funny basement story. But anyway, I'll tell you that
Yeah,
another
and we all got them. We all got basement
time.
stories. We all got basement stories
This
for
was
sure.
hilarious. So, yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
we
Yeah,
definitely have to link up on that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
this has been awesome, Kevin. Thank you
Hmm.
so much.
Yes, my website is professork.com, and also you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm simple, www.linkedin/Professor K, and you can find me there. Look forward to connecting with people, answering questions, and hopefully working together to develop a game plan to win in the sport of business.
This has been amazing. Hopefully, from a subscriber-based perspective, we're bringing you some different experts throughout industry who are giving you insights and things you need to think about. Whether it's starting your own business, whether it's entering the next phases of your career, whether it's just how to show up. Hopefully, you're taking that to heart. These experts are here and available to you to reach out. We will share Kevin's information as we have with our prior guests. If you want to reach out and have further conversations or take advantage of their services, we are really, really proud to be able to have experts like Kevin attend these type of sessions and give us some insights and things that we need to be thinking about as we grow professionally in whatever form that you deem right to meet your desires and needs that are pulled in play. That's the goal of the gentleman's standard, because standards are set, they're not followed. Thank you so much for listening this week.